Decision making is an integral part of modern management. Essentially, rational or sound decision making is taken as a primary function of management. Every manager takes hundreds and hundreds of decisions, subconsciously or consciously, making it as the key component in the role of managers. Decision plays important roles as they determine both organizational and managerial activities. A small tip here: any decision taken at any level has to take into account the conflicting needs of the individuals who are affected by the decisions, and hence conflict resolution is a part of decision making process. Now, how do we define decision making? So there are various definitions. According to the Oxford Advanced Learning Dictionary, decision making means the process of deciding about something important, especially in a group of people or in the organization. Decision making involves the selection of a course of action from among two or more possible alternatives in order to arrive at a situation for a given problem. Importance of decision making. Decision making process is a consultative affair done by professionals to drive better functioning of any organization. Thereby, it is continuous and dynamic activity that pervades all the other activities in the organization. Since it is an ongoing activity, decision making process plays vital importance in the functioning of an organization. Since intellectual minds are involved in the process of decision making, it requires solid scientific knowledge coupled with skills and experience in addition to the mental maturity. Further, decision making process can be regarded as check and balance system that keeps the organization growing both in vertical and linear directions. It means the decision making process seeks a goal. The goal are preset business objectives, company's mission and its vision. To achieve these goals, companies may face a lot of obstacles in administration, operational, marketing, or operational domains. Such problems are sorted out through comprehensive decision-making process. No decision comes as an end in itself, since it may evolve new problems to solve. When one problem is solved, other arises, and so on, such that decision-making process, as said earlier, is continuous and dynamic. As we go in, as many decisions we take, each one leads to another different concerns, another different problems, and that's how this is a continuous process. A small piece of advice here. Many organizations ensure that certain autonomy is given to the employees in the middle layer as well as those slightly senior, so that decision making need not be centralized all the times. So there are different steps for decision making process. We'll quickly look at both personal steps, personal decision making process steps, and also organizational decision making process. Steps in personal decision making process. Decision making process for personal purposes involves the following step. Now, in a way, when we say decision making process, when we make our decisions, we go through this process intentionally or unintentionally, preparedly or unpreparedly, but this is exactly how a decision would be taken ahead. Any decision you take it in your personal life, you would just be curious. You should be observing on what that needs to be there. A purpose for taking a decision comes when you see a problem which is existing there, and then you would figure out what could be the way to solve the problem, what should be the goals towards it, and how do I plan towards it. And then the next stage, where you search, you explore, and you gather different evidence. You figure out what kind of advice or what kind of a decision if I take, what would be the outcome and how that would lead to the other aspects of it. Once you're clear with all these, the next step you take is you take an action. You implement the decision, right? You generate creative and logical alternative solutions. If this is being taken, how that problem can be solved, which you have been observing earlier, right? And then you evaluate whether it is working, not working, how is it happening. You make your own educative guesses, what I said, you create your own hypothesis and challenge your hypothesis. And then, as I said, the 10th step is reach a conclusion. You go ahead and then you find that. Typically, in a way, making a decision, this is exactly how it happens in a personal level. But when it comes to organizational decision making, the process would involve the following steps. Step 1, as I was saying, is defining the problem. This is a very important and crucial step in organizational decision making, where you define the problem in great detail. The entire way ahead depends on how clearly the problem is defined. If the problem is not defined to that clarity, then the proceeding steps might not lead to overall organizational expectations or the goals that we have thought for. So defining the problem is one of the important steps for organizational decision making process. Once you define a problem and you're very clear, this is exactly what I want to solve, the second step goes gathering information and collecting data. Now, once the problem is established, you need to get enough and more information, enough and more data pertaining to that particular problem, because this data and information will help us to look ahead for a solution which is more comprehensive and well thoughtful and structured. So collecting information regarding the problem, pertaining to the problem, and collecting enough data. There are times where we collect a month's data, quarters data, years data to understand if this is a kind of a problem that is pertaining, then how the decision can be taken. So until and unless we get enough information and data with you, which explains the problem and supports what is and gets the clarity of that particular problem, it is difficult, or it might not be fruitful solution ahead. Step 3, as it says, developing and weighing options. So once the problem defined, you gathered enough information and you collected data, it's important for us to figure out what options are available. How do what all the solutions could be there? How do I go about each solution? Can I check each solution very clearly? Can I figure out n number of an option which will lead me to a particular outcome that I'm expecting? If this is what I do, then what could be the next possible way? It needs to get in that way. So once the problem defined, you gather enough information and you have collected data, the next step is you develop and weigh the different options. You see which option works good. The fourth step says choose the best possible option. Now this is a very interesting and tempting conversation, a tempting place, point during the decision making thing. Like when you have different options for a particular problems, you need to choose what is best possible. You need to weigh from every possible angle, because when group of people, for example, taking a decision, there would be biases for each of the option, there would be favoritism for each of the things, there would be more knowledge or understanding of a one particular person of each of the problem. It is very critical for us to choose the best possible option, because the problem, the data and the different options to the next level comes when you pick that one best possible option which could lead you to the solution. The next step in the process is planning. Once the option is there, now how do you execute it? Now executing a plan is much more important than planning itself, because many a times we come with so many plans, but when you so many ideas, so many options, but when you plan it, when you try to craft it in a way how this needs to be executed, is where the real challenge lies. So what's over in this particular step, what you do is you break the option or break the problem into multiple small ways, and then you plan for it at each step. You plan what outcome that could come, how do you handle a situation, how do you handle a challenge, how do you handle everything possible relevant to that particular plan that is being made. And then the next step comes, which take follow-up action. Once a plan is done, plan is of no use until we take an action towards it, right? We need to work towards it. We need to execute the plan that is made. Now, any decision when it comes in an organizational level, which flows through this particular steps, wherein you define the problem very clearly. This exactly is what is the problem, this is what I want to achieve, and this is how I would do. And then you gather enough and more information and collect a lot of data pertaining to this to see how this is going ahead, and then you develop and weigh different options. Once these options are there, you choose the best possible option that could work for that particular scenario, and then you plan in detail how that execution is done. And last and the most important thing, you execute it. You take follow-up actions towards the decision making process. Decision making process follows the mentioned sequential steps as I was explaining till now, and hence a lot of time is spent in this process. This is the case with every decision taken to solve management and administrative problems in a business setting. Though the whole process is time consuming, the result of such process is professional organization. The professional organization is huge. Now let's also understand the role of an OODA loop, right? OODA loop in decision making process. An important concept in the field of decision making is this particular loop called as OODA, which stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. This refers to the strategic advantage that a decision maker gets over his opponent when he observes the situation and orients himself and then decides the acts accordingly. The theory underlying the OODA loop is that the decision making within our mind happens according to the way in which the recurring loops of observation, orientation, decision and action happens in response to a particular situation. The basic premise is that decision makers must be agile and alert to the situation and have a clear head and cool mind to take a decision. In the OODA loop, you find that the inputs from the environment are taken by means of information, interaction with the environment and the circumstances that unfold with the interactions. Then the orientation of the situation happens by means of individual internal processes and the perceived expectations along with his own conditioning. The next stage where the decision has to be taken takes over, where the information from the situation meets the individual's thought process, leading a decision making capabilities. Finally, the decision leads to the action where the decision is actualized and made operational. The important thing to remember about the OODA loop is that feedback is an integral component of all stages, with information flowing back and forth between the individuals and the situation. The need for this fitness is that decision maker ought to seize the situation and then comprehend the same along with the ability to take quick decisions on the spot depending on the way the situation unfolds. The reason being that the OODA loop and the concept of decision making and its imply is a sound idea and something that can be used to improve the decision making process. In the hectic corporate world, there is often no time to lose, especially when quick decisions have to be taken, and hence OODA loop provides a good basic, a good basis of the decision making and the way in which decision makers can go about their decision making process. As I was mentioning, when I say OODA, it's observe, it's orient, it's decide, and then act. It goes in that flow. You observe, you orient towards it, you decide, and then you act, and that loop goes on.